All right. Well, hey, man, we're going to go ahead and kick this thing off. My name is Michael, and I'm sitting here with my cousin Kyran. And today we're talking about fathers. And both of us happen to be fathers. So we're going to kick it off like this. So since it's Father's Day, we'll break it down to something everybody's familiar with. And I'll start with a question. So who's your favorite TV father?
Oh man, that's a good one right there. Favorite TV father. Uh, I, can we just be ourselves, or are we kind of going like?
I don't know anybody else to be, man. Go ahead.
All right, bet. There we go. Hey, so on one side, my favorite TV father is Bill Cosby.
Okay.
On the other side, my other favorite TV father is Al Bundy.
So, hey, which one reminds you more of your dad?
Well, all right, let's go with Bill. Bill reminds me more of my dad. You know, my dad is funny too, and he kind of like got that Al Bundy. He be like Al Bundy be chilling. He don't really care about some things. You know what I mean?
Right.
But at the same time, you know, I got a good black dad. You know, when he was living. So I'll go with Bill for right now.
Okay, got you. It's funny that you said Al Bundy, man. I definitely wasn't expecting that. So, all right. So we talking about dads, and we talking about the significance of fathers in the home. So, and it's interesting. You broke down two totally different types of personality types in terms of fatherhood. And when you think about that, right, you got the Al Bundy father, which if you look at it from the standpoint, he out there trying to grind and, do his thing. But at the same time, he was very, what's the word I'm looking for? He was very,
Crass.
yeah, there you go. He just said what was on his mind, right? Whatever it was. And hand in his pants, sitting on the couch, hey, leave me alone kind of dude. I went out there and earned a couple bucks. Now I'm at home and I don't want to be bothered, right? So that being said, as we talking about dads, then you got the Bill Cosby type, right? Who is a professional out there, working, married to a professional. They raising their kids. It's actually a good contrast between, TV dads, right? Or families, because I think we get a chance to really see that, right? Every day. If I was to break it down and look at it from that standpoint, from the humor side, what was the thing that drew you to Married with Children versus the Cosby Show, and how you interweave those two dynamics into that TV dad component?
So I'll say the comedy side, the real funny side of the Al Bundy part of TV dad was my dad loved to bowl. Like, he loved to bowl, And when we had the bowling alley, he would find himself teaching other people how to bowl that weren't even related to him. He'd look two lanes over and then, try to coach somebody up. And we like, come on, Dad, like chill, man. Like, but he loved bowling. And the other part that kind of made me kind of say Al Bundy is because I see some Al Bundy in me where I just like to chill. You know what I mean? Not that I'm like a dismissive dad or anything like that, but I just, every once in a while, which I don't do, every once in a while when I do want to do it, I want to sit and just watch TV, even though I don't do it often. So it kind of reminded me of my dad as far as the bowling aspect, but me as far as like, sometimes I just want to lay back and just chill. And then, going to the Cosby side of things is my dad was not a professional in the sense of a doctor or anything, but he had a profession. He was a factory worker. He did it for 40 years, and he was involved in our lives.
Yeah. It's interesting, man, when you look at those dynamics, right? Blue collar, white collar components, but then you're able to draw something from both aspects, which I think says a lot about, men in general, but I think it also says a lot about work ethic, because the one thing that you can draw from both of those is the work ethic, right? So whether you're a blue collar worker, you know, Al Bundy was the type, hey man, I'm gonna come home, kick back, get me a beer, watch, you know, some sports or whatever. And, you know, this is what I'm gonna do. And then, you know, you had Cliff Huxtable who, hey, I'm gonna come home, try to get me a vacation, you know, get me a break, watch a little bit of, you know, TV, and, you know, Old Yeller was his thing. Right. And so, but just getting a chance to really just see those different dynamics. And I think the other side of it is that you can have both in both worlds. And what I mean by that is, from a racial dynamic, you could break it down and you can see both of those in any particular, you know, situation. Right. So, you know, in one hand, you get that whole concept of family. And this is what family looks like. The dynamic between both of those was, you know, it was a whole family, right? You had the father in the home, the children, and the mom. And so it really kind of gives, you know, insight to that. But since we are talking about fathers and legacy and those things, what is some stories that you may have from, you know, your childhood, just like remembering something about your dad that just really stands out, you know, as you were growing up? Maybe it was a life lesson that you took from him, of something that, you know, you still carry today, or maybe it was just something funny that also became a life lesson.
Let me go to the easiest thing, probably something that I've been going through right now. My dad would always say, insurance costs way too much until you need it. And being, you know, a young kid, man, I didn't even know what insurance was, man. Like, why are you talking to me about insurance? I don't know what no insurance is. The only thing I know is that, you know, at the time was he would always talk about paying his car insurance and don't even get in your car if the insurance is not updated and things like that. So now this carries over into what I'm, you know, been going through recently with house insurance. So I have home insurance, and we had a leak under our home, which was unbeknown to us. We've been in the house already for like going on 7 years. But there was some stuff that went wrong during the building process that we had no idea about. Fast forward the story, we had a leak, and next thing I know, I'm like, yo, like, I'm just chill because I know we have home insurance. And when I found out how much it costs to break up the floor, to have water mitigation come out, to have mold mitigation come out, though, leak detection, then reconstruction, I'm looking at like 30 G's out of my pocket if I don't have home insurance.
Wow.
But I'm like, yo, I thank God that I actually got home insurance, even though I remember hearing that and it really didn't connect until later on. And another quick one was something that happened in my childhood that my dad told me to do, and I was responsible enough to do, but I didn't listen to him. He always told me, make sure I got insurance on my car. My older brother, which was a good role model and father figure, at the time, I was in high school, he let me buy his car for him. It was a 92 Toyota Paseo. And he was like, he wanted to teach me how to just be a responsible dude. So he let me buy his car from him. So I did a down payment, and then he was like, you got to pay me monthly payments until it's paid off. And you got to keep your insurance on it. I did all of that except for 1 month, I let my insurance lapse. And I was just simply coming from my, you know, I would say in-laws, my brother's in-laws' house, going from 8 Mile, coming back all the way back to 6 Mile on the east side. And I'm just hitting side streets. You know how we, you know, drive at the time, you know what I mean? You ain't really hitting no yield signs or stopping because it's just not smart to stop, especially at night, you know? So this is dead middle.
Detroit, for y'all that may not know.
Yeah. So this is the dead middle of winter. And I'm coming across 6 Mile in Strasburg, right by the liquor store. And it's, mind you, it's like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, because I'm just coming back, you know, from over my family's crib. And I'm like, yo, snow on the ground. I'm like, ain't nobody out here. I don't see anything. I'm going across the, going through the intersection, just thinking like everything cool and regular, because I don't see no lights. I don't hear nothing. Man, I go through the intersection, and tell me why it was, I think it was like a Cutlass or something like that. No lights on, probably doing like 60. That boy hit me, bow. And the only thing I saw was the tail end of the car, and my car just started spinning. Tell me why I was 6 houses away from the crib, and I let my insurance lapse.
Wow.
And my dad, and in my head, I'm like, hey, insurance costs way too much until you need it. So it's not worth letting your insurance lapse in any capacity. Or hey, there it is. I could have had a vehicle that, at the time where I could have got it repaired or even a new one. But being, growing up in the hood and really not knowing, those are the lessons that you learn growing up. But yeah, I'm going to yield the floor to you because, hey, if I didn't learn anything else, I learned that insurance costs way too much until you need it.
Yeah. It's funny, man, because you think about those things and the fact that you said growing up in the hood, because a lot of times what happens is you adapt a mentality that you're not being taught, right? So there's a certain level of, hey, dad teaching you this specific thing, but, you go, it seems so simple, right? I had insurance all the way up until this point. And the moment that I needed it most, that's the moment that I let it lapse. And if you think about it, a lot of times in life, man, those are where some of our most harshest lessons come from. It's the things that, we've allowed to lapse. And these are the lessons. I know my dad, he used to always say, one of the things that he would tell us is that, hey, a good run is better than a bad stand any day, right? And I used to be like, man, I ain't running from nobody, because that's what you raise. I got to be tough. I got to be this. I got to be that. But then as you grow up, you realize that's more than just running from a fight. Like, it's some things, man, that's just not worth your time, right? It's just not worth your energy. And if you choose to turn away from it, then you actually give yourself more opportunities to do other things. And I'm thankful for that because there's times that I could have, missed opportunities because I was distracted, wasting time, as opposed to saying, man, you know what, this is not worth my time. Let me go over here and do something else. So it really manifested more in my adult life than it did, during my teenage life. But I was glad. That's one thing that stands with me today from my dad is, man, a good stand is better. It's better to just move on, right, than to say, I'm going to just stand here and, continue to go back and forth. And, especially with somebody who's not even going in the direction that you're trying to go, right? So you're allowing yourself to get pulled back. And so I like what you said because fast forward to where you are today, you still got this, not only the voice of your dad, but now you have actual experience that you can draw back to and say, man, if I would have just, followed through whatever thing I could have let go of to make that insurance payment, right? Because think about it. In a lot of cases, man, we'll take that same money and buy some clothes, or buy some shoes, or, do something that, I'm gonna look fresh, but I'm driving around with no insurance, right? And so it's just a crazy thought process, man, of, sometimes that's the mentality, right?
Yep.
And I'm sure the person in the Cutlass, they probably didn't have no insurance either. So.
Bruh. hey, insurance, it be sounding like AI. Practice? You talking about practice? Like my insurance? You talking about insurance? You talking about on the east side of Detroit? You talking about, come on.
Bro, you remember people used to go to the liquor store to buy fake insurance, right? Just so that if they got pulled over by the police, they could have a little fake insurance document. Now you can't do that because it's all connected to your plate. When they run it, they know whether or not you have insurance. But that's just the thing, man. People, you don't realize how, bad lessons can lead to a bad outcome. And a lot of times, because there's so many people who you don't see that result, right? It seems like, oh, well, good information. But then it's bad information because, again, you don't want to carry that throughout. So that being said, you're a father, you've been married. How long have you been married?
Man, I've been married now for 23 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Picture behind you.
Yep. So that's my beautiful wife, our son right there. Of course, he's not that size anymore. And, you know, like you see in the picture, I actually got hair and I don't have that anymore. So, you know, it's been a lapse of time, you know what I mean? But hey, look, the crazy part is, hey, do ladies age? Like, do our wives age, man? Like, I'm looking at all this gray in my beard. I ain't got no hair, and she's still looking like Benjamin Button. Like, what's up?
Yeah, I don't think they age, man. I don't have as much gray as you, but you know, every now and then, and I don't use anything either, man. Like, you know, no Beijing, anything like that. This is all natural. But I think the funny thing about that is when you think about raising kids, right? You know, and you have a son. We have 3, daughter and 2 boys, and then, you know, now 2 grandchildren. And you look at the dynamic of family, you know, 23 years married. For us, it'd be 26 years in just a couple days, and just looking forward to, you know, being able to celebrate that. But talking about age, how fast, man, you know, when you look at being a dad, how fast that time tick off the clock, you know, from when he was that size to where you are today. And what lessons would you pass on to somebody, you know, who maybe just getting married, just starting out, just having kids, like what to look forward to as a dad?
Before we jump right into that question, if you look in the background, you see a pair of shoes. And that pair of shoes, my son only had an opportunity to wear them one time before he really grew out of them. So I keep that as a sign that, you know, and it goes back to what my dad would say. Time don't wait on nobody. Time don't wait on nobody. Hey, you want to do something, go ahead and do it. So those shoes are a reminder of how fast time goes. He went from, I think in that size shoe, I don't even know what size that is. But he jumped to, I think like 2 sizes higher than that. And then I bought him another pair of shoes. And it's just the fact that the lesson that I would tell somebody who's younger would be the same thing. Do what you're gonna do now, be intentional, spend the quality time now, because the time goes fast for you as a parent, but it doesn't go fast for them as kids.
Right.
So we have 2 different perspectives of time. So it's more important to make the investment when you have time, and you have time every day. Even if it's like 15 minutes after you come home. Spend time with your kids because they see it in a whole different way than we do. A lot of times we kind of, you know, beat ourselves down and say, man, I wish I would have spent more time with them. But when you look back, those cumulative times all add up to, my dad loves me. My dad spent time with me. And they're going to take lessons that we intentionally did not give, where they received, you know, and it's a phrase that says some things are caught, some things are taught. And if I can tell a young father, spend time with your child while you have it, give them the most attention in that moment, because it's more than being around and not being present.
Yeah. You know, I think that's a very important piece of advice. You know, the one thing I would say is be willing to learn from your children, because, man, it's a lot that they could teach you. I know personally, for me, one of the things that I've always said this, you know, with having 3 kids, they have 3 different personalities, and you get a chance to learn from them how they navigate things, the decisions that they make, the choices, you know, how they reason with those things and that. But specifically with Michael Jr. Being special needs, you know, I've learned a lot from him through not only learning how to be patient, but learning how to really master the ability to communicate with somebody who can't verbally tell you certain things. And so it causes you to have to pay more attention. And it really gives you a lesson in life about being present, right? Because we could be having a conversation and talking, but at the same time, I can miss a lot of what it is that you're saying, because while I'm physically present, I'm not mentally present. And I think when you're, dealing with specific situations that cause you to lock in and you really got to pay attention because you have to learn these cues, you can't be absent and be there at the same time. And I think that's a lesson that, I would pass on, because even when your kids are small, they're teaching you as much as you're raising them. I believe that God gives us the ability to watch them, teach them, but also as we're teaching them, he gives us an opportunity to learn from them, because you learn how to deal with them based on who they are, because each person is an individual person, and you have to be able to learn them. And oftentimes I think you can miss those opportunities because you're just parenting, right? Or just moving too fast. We grew up in an era where it was, you didn't get a chance to really comment on a lot of stuff. And nobody was really asking you a bunch of questions about what you thought. So it was just, hey, stay in the child's place and that kind of thing. And I think there's still a lot of space for that. But I do believe that, getting a chance to actually sit down, dialogue, and learn from them. And I'm thankful that my dad, gave an opportunity for that as well. He would ask me my opinions on certain things, which allowed me to be able to communicate with him and learn from him in that way. But, we would talk about politics all the time when I was a kid growing up. And so I would be able to share my views with him, and he would be able to share things with me to help me, further understand how things operated, in the political world, and then encourage me to look beyond certain things just so that I could be more informed about things. So I think those are, important things as far as it comes down to being a father. One of the things that I would, also ask is, we talking about fatherhood and being present. Do you have any, personal stories of, late night talks, things that, maybe, you find yourself in a situation trying to resolve and said, you know what, this is the one I just need to go to my dad for?
Let's put a pin in that. And come back to that one, because I want to ask you a question. As far as, you have 3 beautiful kids, 1 special needs, and if you can give me a story of how has Michael Jr. taught you how to communicate, even though he doesn't communicate how we normally communicate. And then jump into your other 2 beautiful kids, Imani and Isaiah. And I know I'm saying a lot at one time. And how has that TV dad personality played out in your style of fatherhood?
Got you. So I would say, I'll start with this. The TV dad, for me, at least one would be Fred Sanford. And one because, he was just hilariously funny. And so for me, my kids know that there's a sense of humor that's going to follow with everything. So, I love to laugh and to make our kids laugh. And so I didn't go around saying you big dummy, but I just took a lot of things from, watching that relationship of saying you should be able to have fun with your kids, right? And then the other TV dad for me would be, it's a couple, but the other one that I'll use, I'm gonna go a different direction as well, would be Archie Bunker, because Archie Bunker was, to me, hilarious, and as bigoted as he was who he was, right? And so, so when you look at those 2 things, just be who you are, man. Like, really, when it comes to saying what you mean and what you feel and those kind of things, in that sense, in the comedic space. But he was the neighbor that if you had and you was George Jefferson, they were able to communicate on a level where, hey, you knew who you was working with, right? And so So for me, when you look at those different personalities, man, it's like, hey, here's a guy, he's just gonna tell you straight up how he feel, regardless. And he's the most ignorant dude, on the planet, but his ignorance is right in front of you. And so from that perspective, not that I took a whole lot from him in terms of how to be a dad, I took a whole lot from him in how not to be a dad, right? Like what not to do. But to answer your question about Michael and communicating, early on when he was really little, you're kind of, fighting this internal thing to say, man, how can I, figure out what it is that he wants and what he's trying to say and those kind of things. And so you come up with ways and working with the right people to help you with that. And so we were able to develop an infrastructure within our house where we use, pictures and photographs of things and images. And this thing, it was like we called it a PEX book at that time. And he can go in there and he can grab something and say, this is what I want. Or this is what I'm trying to communicate, even all the way down to his emotions, right? Like how he was feeling. And so then from that, you move past that and then you start to learn his body language. You start to learn the rhythm of, certain vocal tones, right? And you see, okay, cool. This is a happy moment and he's super excited. This is, an emotional moment. I'm not really feeling my best. And this is, I'm kind of in between both and I don't really know, how to manage that. So I'm gonna need some, some assistance here. And that's what you do, man. You watch, you learn, you study the behavior, and in studying the behavior, you learn how he's communicating so that you can communicate appropriately back to him, in that situation. And so, one of the things even now, like, if let's say, I pick out something, and say, well, he'll wear this today. He might decide I don't want to wear that shirt. So he'll go get the shirt that he wants to wear. Right. So the clear communication is I picked out the wrong shirt. Right. So the goal is not, hey, go back and change into what it is that I gave you. It is, this is your opportunity to learn. He's being independent and he's exercising his independence by his own choices. Right. And so to me, I think that that's just a fundamental thing because we want them to be able to make choices and not allow their, I'm going to use this word, disability to get in the way of communication. Because if you do, then you never see the person as an individual. You only see them based off of what their inability is or their disability is. And so we've never looked through that lens. We've always looked through the lens of he is who he is, he has his own personality, and he can make his own choices. Then when we look at the other two, you have this dynamic, Imani being the oldest, she has more of a go get it, out there, just, bubbly personality type of thing. And so, when she's around people, she has that, all of our kids have a sense of humor. Isaiah's probably a little bit more funnier with the dry humor side. Imani is, who she is, and she can make you laugh as well. And so, going back to that household of making things funny, right? We can talk about each other. We can, laugh about the different things that we talk about and really have fun with it. And so, so watching them grow and thrive, and then take that into an environment where even now where they're working. To be able to be professional, but to be able to interact and engage with people on any level. These are all things I think from a foundational standpoint that they were able to gain. And one of the things that I will always share with them as kids growing up is, hey, you have to have thick skin. Like if you're going to be in this house, you got to have thick skin because we're going to have fun. We're going to talk. We're going to laugh. But these are the things that we should be able to do and enjoy one another's company. And not be, super sensitive and soft about everything. Right. And so,
now when you say super sensitive and soft, are you talking about like super sensitive and soft to the jokes? Cause I'm saying like when we grew up, it was really nothing off limits.
And that's the same, right? So like they talk about each other today, right? And so, it's kind of like how we grew up, man. If we like, you got a big head, right? So first time you hear it, it might be from me. Like I'm talking about your head, right? And so or if you got a bad haircut or a bad hairdo or something like that, I'm
Yeah.
talking about it, right? So,
Yeah.
and that was the thing is, because that's just the type of people, that we are. It's like, hey man, prepare them for life, but teach them how to have fun, right? Be able to enjoy it. Like some things we know today, you can't. Not everybody is receptive to to some of those things, and so it's the jokes, and just teaching them to kind of have that thick skin in that way.
Cool, cool. So one more thing is I remember us talking a while back. And by the way, for those who don't know, Michael Jr. is, how old is he now? He's a millennial, right?
Yeah, Michael Jr. is 24.
24? He'll be 25 this year, right?
February.
Oh, so he's a 99 baby.
90, yep.
Okay.
2000.
So 2000, yeah. So he'd be, he's 25 this year, right?
Wait, is Michael 25? Man, bro.
Hey, look,
Yeah,
that's what
mine's
family is for,
27.
man.
And yeah, wow, man. Wow.
Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
So for those of you out that don't know, Michael Jr. is nonverbal in the sense the way we're communicating. And he is 25 years old. But you had said something a couple weeks back about how he had communicated with someone in a grocery store and what you took from it. And it was just like, kind of like the Archie Bunker thing. He is who he is. Like God made him a certain way. And we have to learn and see the beauty as we grow, to see the beauty in each other and how each person communicates individually and not try to put, each other in a certain type of cast. So can you run that story back?
Yeah, 100%. So we were actually in Micro Center. Shout out to Micro Center. As you can see, all this stuff behind me, not all of it came from Micro Center, but I'm very, technically involved. Anyway, but we were in Micro Center and we were waiting on a custom build. And as we were, it was a guy who came up and he started talking to Michael. And it was really cool because as he was talking to Michael, hey, is your dad doing this and that, so forth and this and that. And he was just engaging him on the level of not thinking about, hey, his disability or anything like that. He was just talking to him just like you would walk up and introduce yourself and talk to somebody, asking him his name and that kind of thing. And so, so the interesting part about this whole story is as I got up to the counter and was, getting ready to take care of checking out and all of that stuff, the young man that was behind the counter, he actually was like, man, he reminds me of my cousin. So Michael was in a super, happy mood and just laughing. And, he was I would say, very noticeable. And so you can see the joy in his heart, and which attracts a lot of people, man. People, sometimes they're having a rough day. They don't always get that type of engagement. And so when they see him, it's like, man, it's good to see somebody who's smiling and laughing and just enjoying life. And in that way, no matter where you are, that is exactly who he is 100% of the time. And so he doesn't, like a lot of us, we start looking around and trying to figure out who's watching us and, that kind of thing. For him, it's not that. So people are just naturally drawn to that. And so when the young man behind the counter was just kind of beginning to share that, it was like refreshing to him to say that what he was saying is, man, he reminds me of my cousin. He has such this just joyful disposition, if you will. And I thought that was pretty cool. But even the guy who was just engaging him, I thought that was really cool as well, because people take time to stop and to acknowledge. And for a lot of people, and you may be someone out there who has experienced this, you have a special needs kid, and sometimes you go somewhere. I would just say this: never be embarrassed, by your children, like their behavior or what have you. People can't understand or learn unless they ask questions, right? And sometimes people will look and they don't want to ask questions or they don't want to say anything. But my thing is just ask. The best way we can all learn is by asking. Don't make any assumptions or anything like that. And try to make people feel comfortable. We just know that a lot of people we've come across, sometimes they can feel uncomfortable taking their kids out, especially when they're little, into a specific environment and all of those things. But then that puts limitations on the child, right? And it puts limitations on their interactions. And so that's one of the things that we've never done, is put limitations on Michael's interactions with others. We've always allowed him to, when people come up and they talk to him, we allow him to engage, right? So hopefully that answers your question. But that was the situation at that point in the store.
Yeah. No, it definitely answers my question. I was really thinking about, sometimes you can't recapture that moment. But I think you were referring to basically like how God allowed you to see that Michael's uniqueness reminded you of yourself as far as how you are to communicate as a father.
Yeah.
And it kind of like restored, like you told me, like you were like, man, it felt good to you that other people saw him as like, just talk to him, and feel okay with asking the questions. And I think you said that, but it was just a little bit different than what you said it the first time. But I really get the point, and I hope that everybody else kind of get the point. It's cool to be who you are, ask questions, and the beauty of people who are different and things that we don't know, it's the discovery part. You know what I mean? Like when we're curious people, it makes life more interesting.
It does.
And not just nosy.
To your point about that, I think, one of the benefits of watching Michael, right, for me, so just to go a little bit deeper with that, is learning that you can be open to communicate with people, right? Regardless of their judgment or their prejudices. And what I mean by that is regardless of what they think beforehand, because not everybody thinks the same way, right? But a lot of times as people, we're more standoffish because we think that people are thinking this about us or thinking that about us. And then watching Michael, you never have that concern where he's thinking, well, somebody think I'm this or that or whatever. No, it's his pure heart that allows him to be right where he is and be exactly who he is. Where, think about it, a lot of us, before we ever walk into a store or before we ever walk into a place, right, we'll say, people gonna treat me this way because I'm this, or, I'm tall, I'm short, I'm, black, I'm white, I'm whatever. I never experienced that, with him. And I think that's freeing because it says, you know what, he's comfortable being who he is around whoever he's around. And if we learn that as a society, right, where, man, just be who you are and be comfortable with that, right? You don't have to measure up to what's in somebody else's head, especially when you're putting it in their head before you ever have a conversation with them, before you ever even open your mouth and talk to them. And so I think that that's a very important aspect of being around, watching and learning, from him is, man, look, if I feel like laughing, I'm a laugh. If I feel like crying, I'm a cry. Whatever I feel like in the moment, that's exactly what I'm going to experience in that moment. And I think there's a lot to be said about that because, we live in a world that, sometimes we'll suppress our happiness and we'll suppress, our sadness, right? Because we don't want to make other people uncomfortable. And I just, with him, you don't see that.
Yeah. So back to the question that you asked. I'm gonna ask you to do it first. The advice. That pillow talk advice.
Yeah. I think what comes to mind for me, is for my dad. I think one of the most critical moments in my life, and this is when I realized that being an adult with responsibilities really mattered. There was a point in time in my life it was actually working, and I had a situation that happened at work, and when it did, my first thought was just handle it, right? And fortunately, I had the wherewithal to reach out to my dad, and I called him and I told him what was going on, and I was like, Pop, I'm just I'm upset, I'm angry, I really want to go hands-on in this situation. And my dad was like, think about it this way. You're a grown man with a family. And while it may feel good to get into a physical altercation with somebody, think about what the cost of that would be. And as my dad started to really share some things with me, about his life, it really helped me to understand that, man, you don't have to handle everything with, being physical, right? So sometimes you can win the war by doing exactly what you need to do, which is a good, a good run is better than a bad stand, right? Because in that situation, if I would have stood and went the direction that I wanted to go, it could have cost me my job. It could have cost me so many other things. And then you look down the, line in the future of what you don't see, right? Then could put you in a position to where you look a certain way, right? And so I was glad to adhere to that device and not allow my pride to get in the way and influence me to do something that, potentially would have cost me for years to come. And so my dad helped me really to break it down and consider what was more valuable in terms of what I had to lose than what that one moment would have given me. And I think that that's an important thing, man. And so I've always been grateful to be able to have him to call and to be able to ask and to say, hey, I'm feeling this way. What's your thoughts about that? And so that's one of the things that talks that me and my dad had in my adult life and really was just getting started, that really set me on a path of there's a right way to do things, and you have to be able to use your mind to do it more so than, just responding in a way that's going to be a physical altercation.
Cool. Yeah, because I tell you this much, hey, we got a lot of friends, and family members who, things turned out a different way because of, allowing us to get into our feelings and a physical altercation versus, take the adult way of handling things. You know what I mean?
One thing I'll throw in there too is that's the benefit of talking, right? Oftentimes you hear people say men don't talk. I don't necessarily think that's true. I think there are men that don't talk, but I do think that there are men who do talk. And fortunately, I grew up always talking with my dad. So because of that, I always knew that I had that place that I can go and speak to him about anything, right? And get the advice that that he would provide for me. And then it was up to me to listen. But if you put it on, men don't talk, that's not always true. Sometimes I think as a man, when you are talking, you want to make sure that you're talking to somebody who's actually listening to you, right? Because oftentimes people want you to say what they want you to say, but they are not necessarily ready to hear what it is that you have to say. And I'm thankful that I've always had somebody in my life, my father, who was always willing to listen to what I had to say and then give me advice based off of that.
I want to make sure that we not like leaving out anybody as far as, because it's pretty obvious that we have fathers in our life. You know what I mean? But there are so many people who don't have fathers in their life. But I would go on and say probably one of the most important, or those nighttime, pillow talk conversations that me and my wife had about my dad was when I was talking to my dad. I don't know exactly what the situation was, because it happened so long ago. But I was worried about, was something gonna work out, And I was like really talking to him about it, saying this was going on, that was going on. And he basically told me in so many words, he was like, son, don't worry about it. That ain't your business. That is not your business. How God gonna, work it out.
Yeah.
And I just took that. I was like, yo, that was crazy. And it brought such light to me. And it made me have so much peace, because it was basically saying, I can't work it out for myself. So why am I continuing to worry about it? Yeah. And if I felt like I did my part, let God do his part. Let him do what he gonna do. So that's probably one of the lessons that I took was, and I can hear his voice. He was like, "That ain't none of your business. That ain't none of your business." You know, so I was like, at this point in my life, when things don't seem to be working out or I just don't know, I just sit back and be like, you know what? That ain't none of my business. And then I rock on from there. It gives me peace to know that even as a man, you feel like everything is on you sometimes, but you got a Heavenly Father is like, yo, I got you. Like, it's on you, but it's on you to do your part. And after that, you need to chill. Like for real, you need to just chill out. So, yeah, that was probably the biggest lesson that I took in a nighttime pillow talk conversation, that my dad's advice came to me. Yeah. Quick question, not a quick question, but comparing yourself with how most people in our situation grew up, as far as just growing up wherever you grew up, but the statistics are pretty much the same throughout the United States. Black men, they normally don't grow up in the two-parent household where the father is present. Yeah. And I'll tell you the observation that I have is that I noticed that the people who had two parents or the father was active in their lives, they are a reflection, or they almost copy and paste that in their own family. Whereas like now I know more good men who didn't have fathers actually have families and they're a good father versus they continue in that cycle. And I came upon that because I had went through my phone and I was like, yo, I keep hearing all these statistics and this is going on, that's going on. But every man or friend that I have in my phone, they are present in their children's life. I'm not saying how present, but enough to, at least on the face, that I know that when we talk, they always bring their kids up in conversation and they're present in their kids' life in some way. Most of them, I'm not saying all of them, I'm just saying most of them. How does that, look like when you look through your phone?
Yeah, I think you and I were talking the other day and I was mentioning, man, I started to kind of go back through my, friends growing up and just thinking through like, wait, and yeah, there was always a father present in, I would say 90% of the lives of friends that I've had. Whether they were, in the home or not was different, but they were always actively present, right? And one friend in particular who I was telling you about, a good friend of mine growing up, it was funny because his father, talking about advice that you would get, I could hear his dad's voice today, and he would show up, and every time he would, the first things out of his mouth, almost even before hello was, hey boy, you better lift them weights and leave them girls alone, right? Get into books, make sure you putting something in your head, and make sure you building up so you can protect yourself out here in these streets, right? So, so it was always the preparation, and his dad was a Marine, as well. So his dad had been through the Vietnam War, that kind of thing, and so growing up and being an adult, understanding now where he was coming from was, don't let things distract you or keep you from succeeding and reaching your potential. And so thinking back through, some of those friends, even looking at, some of those fathers who, man, whether they were giving advice or whether it was just being an example in their day-to-day, their work ethic and all of those things. That's why a lot of times when I hear statistics, I often sit back and wonder, like, if we are the ones that can actually tell the stories, whether it's the father that, is your biological father or the man that raised you, right? The stories might be a little different, right? If you sit down and talk to different people. Of course, there's guys out there who don't know who their fathers are, but it doesn't mean that they didn't have a father figure in their life. And I think whether that was a pastor, whether it was an uncle, whether it was, the dude down the street that told you, hey, man, stop getting in trouble, little knucklehead child, go home and, whatever. Yeah. They were there, right? And so, and I think that that's very important because we use the term, oftentimes it takes a village, but normally in our community will put the men out of that village. But I think that, there was a lot of strong, positive men, in our neighborhoods that, we got a chance to see. And look, all of them wasn't the cleanest. And what I mean by that is, man, it was dudes that was straight winos, alcoholics, but sometimes they would be saying stuff that would be, wow, this is good, good, because they keeping you out of trouble. And so those are the things that, we often have to look at and really think about. To that point, how about yourself?
I would say that definitely I had other men in my life who were not my father, of course. And by the way, yes, I grew up in a 2-parent household, but my dad was not in the home the whole time. You know what I mean? Relationship issues going on. So my dad showed up, but didn't necessarily live at the house for a period of time. And then my mom passed away. And it wasn't nothing but a bachelor pad after that point, because it was all my brothers for the most part, every cousin that I have, and my dad at the crib. So my mom did her job until probably about the age of 13, when I was 13, and then she passed away. But I remember a friend right around the corner from her, Mr. Morris, my boy Rob. It was so funny. So Mr. Morris would give me a ride to school, and I'm going to Cass all the way from the east side. So I got to get up in the morning, like at 6:15 to get on the bus to make sure I'm at school on time. And my boy Rob was getting a ride to school, and he was like, "Yo, Kyle, you want to you need a ride to school?" And I was like, "All right, bet, I'll take it." So I got up later. I was more convenient. And then Mr. Morris would drive over to my house and pick me up, and then we'd head off to school. And we would listen to every morning, same time, "Hello, Detroit, you won my heart." Sammy Davis Jr., "Hello, Detroit." And I think it was one time where I was late.
You want to be a part of it?
I know, man. I want to play it right now. I want to play that song right now. It's in the air, it's everywhere. A special touch of you, irresistible you. Hug and kiss. No. Anyway. Don't nobody know about that. Hey, that's just a D. But anyway, all right, let me get back to the point. The point was this. I was late one day when he was picking me up, and he saw me. And he saw me coming out the crib, and I was just running to catch up. And I was like, yo, waving him down, yelling like, yo, I was only a few minutes late, because they had waited for me. And what I learned was that I never heard this from Mr. Morris, but I heard this from his son Rob. He was like, "Hey, Kai, remember that time my dad made you chase after the car? And didn't let you get in, and he finished taking us to school." He was like, "Man, I told my dad, why you gonna do him like that?" He was like, "Yeah, somebody need to teach him a lesson." He was like, "Man, he got it, Daddy. He was just talking about teaching him a lesson." But the whole point was this: it does take a village.
Yeah.
And whenever you get the same message from people who are not directly your parent, you learn it better.
Yeah.
And when everyone speaks the same language, they shape the person and they shape the morals and the values in which you're going to live in. So that's why it's important that, even us who are not fathers, we can serve as a father role or a father figure, because, I know you've been a father figure prior to the kids in the marching band and things like that. We see that our family members, take in other kids even when they not our kids. You know what I mean? So I just think it's important to just be a fatherly figure, even if you don't have a father in your life or if you're not someone's biological father. And I hope I answered the question.
No, you did.
Okay.
Yeah, no, 100%. And think so I'm gonna go through a list of people that we know, right? And earlier I said Archie Bunker. So I'm gonna tell you who my father figure personality was that reminded me of Archie Bunker, right? And that was Rob, right? Rob reminded me of Archie Bunker. So this will give context to the earlier part of it, right? Because I know people's like, why did he say that? What would make him connect them? But now you would know why, because Rob said exactly what he wanted to say, right? And he also liked the bow, to your Al Bundy point, right? But he was that guy that worked, came home, took care of business, and he had some expectations of what, type of neighborhood and all those things should look like and all of that, right? And I think a lot of times, man, you miss the fact of we grew up around that blue collar guy, right? But we watched them take what they had and maximize it to that, aspect. But the reason why, because he would be the one, had a pool table in the basement, gonna drink his beer, and he gonna watch TV and relax. And when he came home, that was the simplicity of life for them. Hey, I'm coming home. I already worked hard. I'm gonna have me a beer and I'm gonna kick back and I'm gonna watch, something on TV, sports or whatever, and that's it. And then every now and then, have some folks come over. We're gonna shoot some pool and we're gonna talk and laugh, listen to some comedy albums and that kind of thing. So when you think about that, that's that personality of, kind of who he reminds me of, right? And so, so if you had to pick one to line up with, who would it be? Who would be the Al Bundy in the family?
Oh, Al Bundy was Uncle Johnny. Bruh. Al Bundy was Uncle Johnny, man. Hey, and look, I'm sorry. I got to one up and make it more accurate. Uncle Johnny was actually Samuel L. Jackson before Samuel L. Jackson was Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah.
Yo, man, look, this man will cuss out a kid and a cereal bowl at the same time.
He was like the Bernie Mac, Samuel L. Jackson, all wrapped up in one, man.
Yes, man. The only thing I can remember growing up is he could literally eat a half box of frosted actually corn flakes, and he would get a cake mixing bowl, pour the cereal in the cake mixing bowl, and pour the milk in there and eat that much cereal, man. Dude, that was one of the funniest but everyday, regular things that I would see, and I was just like, dude, why you eating out a cake mixing bowl?
Yeah.
Because he Uncle Johnny. Like, ain't nothing gonna change him from not being Uncle Johnny. And there were words associated with that where, he'd tell the, MF kid to go get the GD bowl and pour it in my MF, and then you get that. And I was like, yo, and it was normal talk. But at the same time, that's where he was at in his life. And still there was no love lost. That was just the language in which, those people around you speak. And it ain't nothing but love.
So speaking of that, right? Because we grew up and, language was the language that we heard, right? Our kids probably not so much, right?
Not at all.
Yeah, and that's where we learned to have that thick skin. And I say not so much because I can remember when we would go visit, trying to kind of prepare for what you're gonna hear, right? So it's like, hey, you're gonna hear some words that you're not gonna be able to repeat, right? When you get back. And so I remember, I don't know if I should tell this story, but we went to visit, and after a visit, we came back, and Imani, I was getting ready to run to Kroger, and I was on my way out to the store, and so she must have been about 5 or 6, and so she said she wanted to go, but I was like, no, not this time. And so she was standing at the top of the stairs, and she said the D word, right? But she said it as if it was just a normal word, right? It was like, so I looked at Priscilla looked at me, and so it's like, man, what'd you say? And the innocence of it was, she said it again as if it was like, just common, language, right? Like, and so the third time, I think she realized, like, maybe I shouldn't be saying this. And so, so we was talking. I won't give names, but we was talking to, in particular, person, and she was. I wonder where she got that from. And so I was like, I said, yeah, it's just circling around the room, And so, so it was something that she picked up, and of course, we made the correction and that kind of thing. But us growing up, to your point, that was very common, like, and in my wife's household, it wasn't, right? She came from very different, more sanitized sort of, background. And so, so yeah, so I laugh because, you think about some of the language that you would hear every day. It was just common everyday language. And to your point, I think, telling the kid to get something, hey, go in the kitchen and get this, or go and get the blah, blah, blah this, right, is a totally different dynamic, right? So
Mad use of adjectives. Mad use of adjectives.
right. Thinking about that, right? With, becoming an adult, your father passed away, and dealing with that, but being a father and dealing with it. Walk us through that, man. Like, your son was young. What was that experience, like, and what in your mind did it help you to kind of develop as a dad in terms of the importance of time?
So, walking you through, losing a father and being a father, what that taught me was time is really of the essence. And I don't know if you ever heard the phrase. I know you heard the phrase, but the phrase is "it's high time." That means it's time right now. It's now time. So it's high time to just be the person God called you to be, straight up. Because I was able to sit in the hospital and watch the last 30 days of my dad's life, and see him go from being fully independent to dependent to basically not speaking, all in a 30-day period. And what I learned during that time was to be grateful. Literally to be grateful and take advantage of the day. Not only to take advantage of the day, but take advantage of those relationships that you do have. And be cool with whatever's happening. I happened to be in college at the time, and I was taking a class, and I had to do a paper, and my topic was on, if I'm not mistaken, gratefulness, if I'm not mistaken. And I had to log daily activities and things like that kind of reflected the data that was going in the paper. So every day that I went up to the hospital, if I didn't stay at night, I kind of chronicled what I was grateful for. And during that whole time period, I was able to see the goodness of God even when it was so dark and even when I really didn't know what was going on. I thought I was just coming home to see him recover and help get him back on his feet, but it didn't happen. And then when he did pass, when I say I was crushed, bruh, I was crushed. When I was crushed. I was crushed. To the point I didn't even really know how to grieve. So we had flown back to Detroit at the time. And then when I went back to Hawaii, my son at the time was 5, I think. And my wife would always bring up stories of my dad. And I really didn't feel like hearing it, for real. It was because I didn't want to just relive the hard part, but that was actually helping me to heal. So what I would do personally is, man, I would go into the garage and I had a list of songs on my little iPod that I would play. And I just play these 5 songs or so, and I close the door and I would just cry till I was almost dehydrated. But that was my way of like kind of getting it out, because I didn't want to cry in front of my son. I ain't gonna lie. I didn't want to cry in front of my wife because they would talk about him more than I did. As a matter of fact, my wife would talk to my dad almost every day. And in my head, I'm like, I'm his son. I can't talk to nobody every day. Like, I really just can't do it. But, you know, ladies are built different, but I just can't talk to one person every day. And then it would be weeks where she would, you know, when he was alive, she would like, did you talk to your dad? I'm like, you talk to him every day. Did you hear me talk about him? Like, you know I didn't call him, but that was a wife's reminder of saying, call your dad. You know, don't get so busy with life that you don't spend that regular, quality, consistent time with the people who mean the most in your life or who mean anything in your life. So I learned how to pace myself and, you know, speak to people who I care about and keep constant communication with them. And I would say one thing I did learn through that was my superpower is consistency. When people describe me, my friends describe me, a lot of times they tell me I'm faithful, I'm consistent. And I would think that's what a father would need to be, or the lesson that if I would have to, you know, tell or teach somebody a lesson is time is of the essence, be consistent, be faithful, and enjoy the moment with whoever it is. Because when my dad passed away, as bad as he looked when he passed away, I don't remember any of like the wilting phase when he just withered away. I remember all of the time that I spent with him prior to then. Yeah, I see glimpses of the pictures of how he looked and the pain and the moans and when he couldn't say anything back. I remember those things, but that's not what's replayed in my head 95% of the time. It's the consistency and the moments that I spent with him over the years and the most recent time before he did pass. That's what I remember. And if I could copy and paste that, I would say every father needs to spend that type of time with their kids or be that presence in your father's life if he is still living. Thanks for taking the time to stay locked in with us, and stay tuned for part 2 coming up.